Okay, good morning. So we're continuing our discussion of Mayim Achronim. Very, very interesting. Some more details today, and we're also going to discuss whether or not women and children have got to do Mayim Achronim. The Mechaber started off in Siman Kuf Pei Aleph, Mayim Achronim Chayva. That's the first sif. We'll see in the sif Yud that perhaps not all of us, myself included, are not particular about Mayim Achronim. Maybe we should change as a result of this. But at the end, we'll see Yesh Nagim Limud Zchus for those who don't do it. So anyway, let's take a look. So we're up to Sif Dalet. So Siman Kuf Pei Aleph Sif Dalet. Says the Mechaber, Ein Tzorich Little Ela Ad Perek Sheni Shel Etzbois. When you do Mayim Achronim after the meal, before benching, you only have to go to the second joint. So if you look at your fingers, the second joint is till here, right? Normally, for the minimum for Netilas Yadayim Rishonim, we said is the knuckles. So, for example, on Tisha B'Av or whatever, you wash till the knuckles. But here we're talking about the second joint, which is higher up. And of course, the reason is because the whole concern is to take away the food that you touch, and you only use the top of your fingers to touch the food. You don't use the whole finger. So it's the tops we're worried about. Anyway, so let's see that in the Mishnah Berurah. Sif Kotan Yud says the Mishnah Berurah, Ad Perek Sheni, Shelemala, have I finished the Mechaber? Yeah. Shelemala Mishnei Pirkei Etzbois, Ein Magia Lichluch HaMeichel. Because above the second joint of the finger, the dirt of the food has not touched. When Etzba HaGudel, Tzorech Little Perek Rishon. Now, it comes to the thumb. If you notice, your thumb only has two joints. So for the thumb, it's the first joint. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. It's interesting. The word yad, is gematria 14. There are 14 joints in the hand. The four fingers has 3 joints each, and the thumb has 2. So each yad has 14. The very name yad sort of suggests its nature, as it were. Anyway, so you have to wash Mayim Achronim until the second joint on all the fingers and until the first joint of the thumb. So about halfway down each finger. But if it so happened that the food did go further down than that, then of course you need to wash even further than that. V'ra olai hamaisa, and it's bad what I've seen, says the Chaim. They're very careful about Mayim Achronim, but when they do it, they're not being yotza. Why? Because what they do, they just put a few drops on the tops of their fingers. It doesn't even get to the first joint. So and the hands still remain dirty from touching the food, and they haven't done it properly. But they should really wash, like I said, until the second knuckle of the fingers and the second joint of the fingers and the first one of the thumb. Okay, good. That's Dalet. Hey. When you do it, your hands should be facing down so that the water runs off. That the dirt sort of goes downwards. Says Mishnah Berurah, that the dirt, because of the water of the pouring of the washing, just sort of washes it away. Sivov im hamasubin rabim. If you've got a lot of people. So who actually, what's the procedure in terms of who goes first? Imagine you've got a wedding or you've got a big Shabbos meal. So if it's up to 5 people, the mevarich, the person who's going to bench to do the zimun, you should begin with him. But if there are more than 5 people there, the most junior begins Mayim Achronim, and they just do it in the way they're sitting. We're not mechabed each other to do Mayim Achronim until you get to the last 5. So imagine there are 20 people there. So then you go around, everyone does Mayim Achronim, and then you get to the last 5. Then when you get 5 left of not yet done Mayim Achronim, you go to the mevarich. He does it. He's 5th from last, and then you do the final last 4. Okay, says Mishnah Berurah Yud Beis. Today, what's the reason that if you've got up to 5, the mevarich goes first? It gives him a minute or two to just look over benching, because the hanocha, the premise is that he is actually going to be motzi the others. So in a way, it's like chazar sashatz. Some say that the purpose of davening a quiet Shemona Esrei is so that the chazan is going to prepare his chazar sashatz. So you're just giving him an opportunity to prepare it. So that's the purpose of the chazan's own private Shemona Esrei. Well, so to over here, you let the mavarich go first, and then the others can do Mayim Achronim, and that will give him an opportunity to just sort of prepare and collect his thoughts and just focus on the benching that he's about to do. Even though Lamaisa nowadays he's not really being made to them, because everyone does say Birchas Hamazon themselves. The halacha has not changed. That it's still appropriate that each person does bench quietly to themselves, and the Mavarich does it in a louder voice. We'll get there in Hilchas Birchas Hamazon. V'gam birchas hazimun tzarich hamavarich lo yima lefneihem, and also he needs to do the zimun. Mishum hachi tzarich la'ayin k'tzas mitchila. He needs to focus a little bit on that and just prepare himself. So therefore, we give him. He's if they're up to 5, he goes first, and then the others to give him that time. If there are more people, then you start min hakoton. What does that mean? The cotton hayoshev b'soif hamasiba, the person at the end of the table. V'atamu, and the reason is because if the mavarich goes first, then there might be quite a long gap until all the people, 10, 15, 20 people are going to do Mayim Achronim, and it's a gnai for him, and also it could be considered a hefsek between his netila and Birchas Hamazon. Okay, and we say ein mechabdin. We don't do. It's not a kibbud. After you go first for Mayim Achronim. Why? It says Mishnah Berurah you've got in your dalet the ein ze kibbud b'mashe yirmaz lo shu yirchatz tchila yodav hamazuhames. It's not a kibbud to say, can you please wash your dirty hands? That's not. I think the phrase is ein kibbud b'mayim. There's no kibbud for that. Okay. Maschilin tesvav kadei shebeshir hazman sheyitlu harbo esideihem. The time that these 4 can wash their hands, yuchel hu la'ayim b'brichas hamazon v'chanal, like we said above. V'after kaim lo detekef netila bracha, even though really you should bench immediately after you do Mayim Achronim, b'shir zeh lo choshev hefsek. This small amount of time that for the other 4 to go wash, and the Mayim Achronim is not really considered significant, and therefore is not considered a hefsek. Umiu efsha b'chdei. But if you can, you should not make any hefsek at all. But once you're down to 5, then the mavarich is the 5th last person to go, and then the other 4 just do it in the order in which they're sitting. They don't have to do it. There's no benefit of honoring them to do it in any specific order. Okay, that's halacha vav. Halacha zayin. Ein mevarchin shum bracha al Mayim Achronim. There is no bracha that one makes on Mayim Achronim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Yud Zayin, the lefi hatam, because remember we said there are 2 reasons for Mayim Achronim. Let's have a look. The lefi hatam should be anu le'el b'sif cotton aleph mishum chashash melach sedoimis dehu sakon le'einayim. The one reason is you've got to remove the melach sedomis, this salt from Sodom, which is a very potent and dangerous salt if it were to touch the eyes. We don't make a bracha on a shmira of other dangers. If a person filters water at night, which one should do, in order there is to avoid eating leeches. Aluka is some sort of leech. So, for example, you're on a hike, you're camping, and you want to get some water. You've run out of water, so you take some water from the local river. You've got to sift it to make sure that there's no animals in it. So you make a bracha on that sifting, even though it's because of sakon, it could be dangerous. Even according to the other reason, to remove the dirt, according to that reason, it may be appropriate because it's a preparation for Birchas Hamazon. Our minhag is not to make a bracha on Mayim Achronim. Of course, Mayim Rishonim we do, but not a Mayim Achronim. Because we don't really do it according to the takon of the Chachomim as per the original institution. Because in the good old days, when you did Mayim Achronim, they would add oil after the natila, after you wash your hands. They would add oil laha'avir es hazuhama me'ayodayim, to remove all the dirt from the hands. Since we don't do it properly, i.e. to put oil on after we wash our hands, therefore we don't make a bracha on this on Mayim Achronim. Okay, ches. Yesh oimrim shemayim achronim einom tzrichim niguv. Interesting question. Do you have to dry your hands after Mayim Achronim? So, Yesh oimrim shemayim achronim einom tzrichim niguv. The first opinion of the Shulchan Aruch is that you do not need to dry your hands. Rambam, however, according to the Rambam, menagev v'achkach mevarach, he would dry his hands and then afterwards you bench. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the first shitta is ein tzrichim niguv. Says the Mishnah Berurah, kiven she'einam boim rak lenakas sedayim. The whole purpose of Mayim Achronim is to get rid of the dirt on your hands from the food that you've eaten, and therefore it's not a question of drying your hands, it's just a question of removing the dirt. Once you've done the natila, you've removed that, and therefore you're good to go. However, according to the Rambam, svir in Sifkot Yutes, to lay nikra natila bli niguv, because it's not drying it is part of the natila. V'ayin le'el soif siman reish kufan gimel mash medas ha'machaba lahokal b'zeh mikol mokum lechatchila. However, better toiv lenagev yodov lotzeis das kulam. Says the Chayodom, it's better to dry your hands for Mayim Achronim to fulfill the opinion of the Rambam, because according to the shitta, the first shitta, you don't need to, but you can. Right? So therefore, it's better, says the Chayodom, to dry your hands after Mayim Achronim. Kosav Abbas Yosef b'shem Sefer Shulchan Shel Arba v'chein hevi be'elirab b'shem HaKolboi the Mayim Achronim ein tzrichin shir el shiyeh boin kedei lahadiach bohen es yodov. There's no shir, you don't need like a revius, but just you need enough to remove the zuhama from your hands, which we said it's got to be from the second knuckle. You only have to wash the tops of your fingers till the second knuckle, until the first joint. So I keep saying knuckle. The second joint on your fingers, or the first joint in the thumb. So you only need as much water as necessary for that. The Mayim Achronim ein tzrichin shir l'sheish bohem kedei ladiach ben es yodov. Of a sefer Ma'aseh Rav, hevi the hanogas agro hisabruvis. However, the sefer Ma'aseh Rav, which brought all the practices of the Gron, that the Gon did require a revius. Okay, Tess. Mayim Achronim noitlin b'chol minei mashkin. You're allowed to use other liquids for Mayim Achronim. It doesn't have to be water. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkot and Chof, shegam heim menakim hayodayim mizuhamo k'moi mayim. Because at the end of the day, if you want to use orange juice or something like that it does remove the dirt of the filth from your hands. Umayri be'ein lo mayim ki'im mashkin. And we're talking about when there is no water. But if you have got water, then ein little b'mashkin, then you should not use other liquids. You should jafka use water. Minei mashkin sifkot and chavalav afilu b'shemen or dvash v'cholov. Oil, honey, or milk can be used for Mayim Achronim. However, chutz miyayin v'nei shechashivusu. You should not use wine, because wine is a choshev drink, and it's not considered appropriate to use that for Mayim Achronim. Koso achronim shekol minei mayim hapsulim l'rishonim. Water that is invalid for Mayim Rishonim, tahainu, for example, shenasa b'hen melacha, you've used it already. For example, you've used water to wash up or something like that. You should not use that for Mayim Rishonim. Or they've changed the appearance. Even if it's possible for animals to drink it for whatever reason. However, that's for Mayim Rishonim. You can use any water for Mayim Achronim. Moreover, you don't even need a kli. You don't need a keli to use it from, nor do you need kerch gavra, someone to actually pour it. And the chatzitzas, we're not worried about that. And you don't need you only have to do it one time on your hands, and that is enough. If you look at 15, he quotes from Moshe Feinstein. He says, "Sheyesh little as I suppose yad yamin tchila." The right hand should come before the left hand. Okay, let's just finish off. Now, the last halacha. Well, what is the story regarding women and children for Mayim Achronim. Very interesting halacha. Says the Mechaber, Sif Yud, Yesh she'ein nagim little Mayim Achronim. There are those people who are not noyeg to do it, right? So even though the Mechaber started off Mayim Achronim chayva in Sif Aleph, in the last sif on this siman, he says, Yesh she'nagim she'ein nagim little Mayim Achronim. The minhag is not to do Mayim Achronim. Va'afilu nagim kain, even those who do have the minhag to do it, Adam shu istanis, someone who is a fussy person, for rogel little yod of acha hasuda, and he sort of generally washes his hands after the meal because his hands are maybe a little bit soiled, sticky, or something from their food, from eating. Lididei, for that person, Havi Yodayim Muzuhames, his hands are considered Muzuhames, so considered dirty. For Tzorech little yod of Kodim Brich Samazon. So that's our heta, as it were. For generally speaking, it says the Mechaber that there are people who are knowing not to do Mayim Achronim, but anyone who's an istanis should be careful to try and do it. Now, some interesting halachas here. Noitlin Bakol. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Chof. Shegam heim menakim hayodayim mezuhama k'mo b'mayim. Sorry, wrong one. Sif Kotan Chof base. She'ein nagin. Now, what is the reason? Why are some people are not noyeg? In Halach, in the Gemara in Chulim, which is the source of this, it says Mayim Achronim chayva. So why do we not do it? Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Kotan Chof Beis. Mipnei she'ein melach sedoimis mitzuya b'neinu. That's the main heta. Now that's Tosfos brings this in Chulim, because nowadays we don't have this very potent salt, and the danger is therefore not there. And the second reason that our hands are dirty, we're not so concerned about that. And just to add, that nowadays, generally speaking, we eat with knives and forks, and therefore it's less of a concern. So there is what to rely on not to do Mayim Achronim, because there's no melach sedoimis, and we're not so choshish about the zuham, and particularly nowadays we're eating with knives and forks, hopefully, so it's not the end of the world. However, the Gan says one should wash Mayim Achronim even today. Why? The time melech sodom is for hayodayim is gam ata shaykh, because it is still shaykh nowadays. Or commercial kasavna b'sif aleph. V'chein kasav magen Avram b'shem ha-mekubalim. In the name of the Kabbalists, the chol adam yizoy b'mayim achronim. One should be careful with Mayim Achronim. V'chein hichme ha-marshal b'yam shal shloima. The marshal is also machmir about this. V'chein kasav ha-berkiyos v'ayin shom shehechme ha-harbe b'zeh. He's very careful. He's very machmir about this. V'tzorech little yodov rotzolema dezem medina tzorech little yodov b'mayim achronim. Kula alma v'kosva achronim shafilu roitz levarach al hayayin ay peres be'emsa hasud tzarich lekancham mikodim. You should wash them if you want to make a bracha, for example, for dessert in the middle of the meal. Before you make a bracha, your hands should be clean, and therefore to bear that in mind. Kim sheyodam luchlachos v'hu istanis. Kodim brich samazon tzarich lizoy shalei lahafsik bein anatil lebrich samazon ela b'divrei Torah. Afilu b'divrei Torah. Not to make a gap between Mayim Achronim and brich samazon, even if it comes to Torah. So just three interesting ha'aras. Number 16, 17, 18. 16. What about women and children when it comes to Mayim Achronim? Well, Legabe 16, Legabe chiyuv noshim b'Mayim Achronim, kosav b'shal shuv salmas Chaim, sheleshnei hatamim noshim shavus la'anoshim b'zeh. What are the two reasons? One is melach sodomis, and one is zuhama, the dirt on the hand. So according to both of those reasons, it should apply to women. V'chein das hagonim shlomo zalman Auerbach and Rabbi Yashiv. They interestingly hold that women are mechuyev in Mayim Achronim. However, Vosna says the minhag ha'olam is ein hanoshim lo tzideim, and that's what you see. You don't really see women, so far as I know, doing Mayim Achronim. Because it's based on this sif over here, the women, we don't have to be so careful about Mayim Achronim, and therefore rak anoshim were machmir about it. V'noshim lo kiblu zos aleim, and women never took upon themselves to wash Mayim Achronim. Okay, interesting. And he says, he quotes Rabbi Merzbach, even in very religious families, women have not been noeg to do Mayim Achronim. For katanim shegiu lechinuch, what about children? So if they're of chinuch age, he quotes Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, that shetov lechanchom sheitu es yedem leMayim Achronim. It's good to be mechanech children to do Mayim Achronim. V'chein huvan is brought al divrei Rabbi Yal Misatma, the Satmar Rebbe, shahir lechanech es haktanim nitinis Mayim Achronim. Okay, so difference of opinions about women and Mayim Achronim. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Yashiv says that the reasons apply to remove melech sedomis and to remove the zuhama. Therefore, they're mechuyev to do it. Others says the minhag ha'olam is not to do it because it's a chumrah based on sifiyut, and therefore there is room for leeway. Ketanim, again, if you do it, it's appropriate to be mechanech children. And in number 17. we said it's mashma the dafka and istanis. If a person, we said, you can be made the nagim. Yesh nagim she'ein nagim to do Mayim Achronim because we haven't got melech sadomis nowadays, or because we eat with knives and forks and we're not so worried about the zuhama. But dafka and istanis should. So in 17 he says mashma midvar she'dafka al istanis nemet tzorich zeh omnom b'shat tzion mashma she'afil mi she'ein istanis tzorich lahakbid bedava. In the Horister, the Shein Halachas, which is Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky's sefer, he says it's mashma from the Shatzion that even someone who's not an istanis should be makbid on Mayim Achronim. And lastly, being mafsik between Mayim Achronim and benching, he says lechatchila kosav le'el sheyesh lizohe shelo lahafsik bedibur afilu ma'at. Not to be mafsik at all between Mayim Achronim and benching. Shetekef from the netila bracha. As soon as you wash, you should go into benching. V'shemitam zeh yesh lizohe shelo lishos shia meruba acha netila. And therefore you shouldn't delay too long after Mayim Achronim. For kolshken shelo lasuk is esek. Don't get involved in doing something after Mayim Achronim. Just get on with benching. If you need something pressing, you were mafsik, then yitl yod of shenis kadeshia bracha tekem to get. If you did get involved in something or you spoke, then just quickly wash your hands again. You should pour the kos for benching. If someone's benching ala kos, pour the wine first and then do Mayim Achronim to avoid any hefsek. Okay, say that.